Local stories, local people. We're taking you inside Western Mass news. It's the Even Better Western Mass podcast with Dave Madsen.
Welcome to this week's edition of the Even Better Western Mass podcast. Wherever you are, hope you're doing well. Also hope that you and your family had a happy and a safe Thanksgiving. Celebrations here and across the country, of course, quite different because of COVID-19. Want to offer my congratulations to Monty Belmonte of WRSI. His 11th annual Monty's March raised over $614,000. Now that's almost double what he raised last year, an amazing number given the tough times that we're all in. But it's also proof that people are looking for ways to help others. By the way, the food bank's still accepting donations online or by mail. Also, congratulations to Rock 102's Baxton O'Brien, their annual Mayflower Marathon raising $72,000 plus for the Open Pantry. The Open Pantry, of course, still accepting donations. Well, this week's Even Better Western Mass podcast focuses on an agency that also needs your help. Christina's House in Springfield has been helping to meet the needs of mothers and their children who are homeless or near homeless since 2012. COVID-19, as you can expect, has taken a huge impact on Christina's House and their mission. My guest this week is Executive Director Shannon Mumblo. Shannon and I talk about their challenges and their needs and how you can help.
Shannon, first, thanks for being a guest on this week's edition of Even Better. Hope you're doing well. Actually, we'll be after Thanksgiving, so hope your Thanksgiving was great.
Yes, it was. COVID safe Thanksgiving, and thank you for having me, Dave.
That is our world these days. Let's start out. For folks who may not know about Christina's House, tell me all about it.
Yeah. So Christina's House is a mission located in Springfield, Massachusetts. We are an 18 to 24 month educational and transitional home for women and their children who are homeless or near homeless. So my mother-in-law started the program back in 2010 when she was just sitting in church one day and felt convicted that she should start a mission for mothers and their children in the community. She was a nurse manager at Bay State Medical Center for over 30 years and retired in 2012. And at that point, she formed a board and wrote the 501c3 herself. And she wanted to start the ministry after doing a lot of research as well and finding that in Massachusetts alone, the average age of homelessness is the age of 8 years old. And she also found that in our local community, there's not really a lot of services that provide a longer term life skills educational program to help people transition from homelessness into independent living. So that was her goal. So our overall mission is to educate, embrace, and encourage all of the mothers and children who come through our program with the hope of having them transition, like I said, from homelessness into independence through the love of the family atmosphere that we have in our home. And now we have two homes. We have one on Madsen Avenue and one on Union Street in Springfield that we just opened a couple of weeks ago, but we closed on the house in April at the height of the pandemic.
So let's talk about the homeless issue in Springfield, the greater Springfield area. My assumption is that most shelters just provide a place to live and to get something to eat, and not the educational services that you provide. Let's talk more about those.
Yeah, so people often ask me what's different about our program. And so I think the difference is you'll notice right away when you come into either one of our locations that they are both historic homes in the city of Springfield. We take pride in the homes that we have. And it's more of a family home atmosphere. So we want the families to come in feeling like it is their home for that brief period of time that they're there for 2 years. And we have a staff of now 3 people. We just hired on a case manager about a month ago, but in real times before COVID, we had about 40 volunteers plus a month who came in to provide services. Now we're kind of doing a lot of virtual learning, but everything that we do is all life skills programming and education for both the moms and the children to help them learn the things and tools they will need to create generational change. So it's not just about helping the moms, it's also about helping the children, breaking generational cycles, and helping them to learn how to live their best lives once they're ready to graduate from our program.
I think many folks who live outside of a city like Springfield, when you talk about generational cycles like that, and how difficult it is to break those, Is that your first challenge with these mothers and children when they come in? Is teaching them that?
Yes, and for me, I was a child myself who was raised in a family with a lot of generational issues, and so for me, I understand firsthand what it takes, and I also know that it could take just one person in someone's life that can make that difference. And so we hope that we're more than one person in these moms and children's lives that can help them make that difference and to help them change and to help them just kind of do the things that they need to do. The work is really difficult, right? So it's not just about learning financial skills. It's also about learning about yourself, what makes you who you are, learning that your past is your past and that you can step out of that and you can move forward, and then giving them the skills and support and encouragement they need to be able to do that.
I'm sure too that you're finding a lot of women and children who, by circumstances not under their own control, find themselves homeless these days.
Yes, we're getting a lot of calls every single day. It's either people who are being evicted now. The eviction now, they're through the pandemic, excuse me, they were not being, a lot of people were not being evicted, and now that's changed, right? And so even when there weren't evictions, the increase in domestic violence, substance abuse, the general stress of the pandemic with the moms and kids and the general situations that people were in is real. And so our calls have increased, if anything. And so we do have a pretty extensive wait list right now for both locations.
So you're finding too during COVID-19, folks who are in a tough situation to begin with. The COVID is just compounding everything.
It is. And so if you were at work and now you're laid off, it's money stress. It's if you were in a domestic violence situation before and now you're home with the abuser, it's, everything is just compounded. And so that's why I think we're getting all the calls we're getting.
Must be hard for you too, wanting to help these women and their children, and you can't because right now you just don't have the room for them.
Right. I think the hardest part of my job is having to say no when somebody calls. We do have a list of resources that we try to provide them with, and we do try to pair the moms with appropriate resources. But if we're on a wait list, our community resources are also typically on a wait list, and it's hard to plug them into services.
What services would they be looking for? Obviously, food, and I'm sure some of them through schools they get some help with that. But I think the average viewer and listener to this podcast, this is just something that is very foreign to them. But I also think in these kind of times too, it's a situation that I think anybody could find themselves in.
Yes. I always tell people that homelessness, you can't stereotype homelessness. It could be myself and my family. My husband could lose his job. I could lose my job. And then we're one step away, if not stepping into becoming homeless. So anybody can experience the effects of homelessness in our community. And I think that's what we're seeing. I mean, we're getting calls from all over the region right now. It's not just Springfield. It could be East Long Meadow, Wilbraham, any of the areas that we might think where people are doing okay, or, are stereotyped as maybe like, upper middle class communities. But people all over are being affected now by the financial crisis and what's going on in our community.
It's part of what you do, trying to erase the stigma of homelessness too, that I'm sure most people think, well, what did I do to put myself in this situation? Is to help them get through that.
Yeah, I mean, the crux of our program is to treat everybody who comes through our doors as the individual they are. So through personality assessments, learning what their gifts are, learning about who they are. It's not about the word homelessness. It's about who this person is, and then treating them as the person they are with dignity and respect and love. And that's the difference for us. And once a person feels loved and feels valued and feels dignity, they're then able to kind of step out of that stigma of homelessness or whatever it is that was kind of keeping them in that space, so that they can realize who they are and who they want to be.
Like you're saying too, about dignity, respect, and love, three things that many of us take for granted, but often folks don't have that, and reestablishing that.
Correct. I
Let's
agree.
let's talk about the impact of COVID on you. You touched on that, as far as closing down one of your houses. Um, it's put a strain on businesses, and I'm sure many businesses who've helped you, and on governments who offer assistance too. What kind of a stress has it put on you, on Christina's House?
You know, I like to look at it in two different ways. I think, our fundraising has been basically shut down. We went from about one fundraiser a month, which is the primary means through which we get income, to not really being able to have any fundraisers except for the one that we're going to talk about later. But I do see the blessing in the pandemic as well, because I've been able to see our community come together to still support us and volunteer. And when we did purchase our second home in April, I had a lot of people come together to help us get the house up to date and up to code and safe enough to be able to open our doors just about a month ago. So through it all, with the help of our community and the people who support us, it's not just COVID, it's so many other things in our world right now that are trying to pull us apart and divide us as people and communities. But I get to work every day in a program where I get to see people coming together to give back for the common goal of helping others, to give them a hand up and not a handout. So it's definitely been difficult in terms of funding. We've pivoted to more grant writing and have been blessed by like the Community Foundation of Western Massachusetts, who's granted us some money, and the city of Springfield for their Prime the Pump program, and then other individuals who have donated throughout. But we are over budget this year because of what we've had to do, and our houses still operate. We still have every day, monies going out to be able to upkeep our historic homes and to also serve the families who are in our homes and who have transitioned out. We don't just let our families graduate and then forget about them. We're connecting with them, and even people who call, we try to provide resources when we can, even if we have to put them on a wait list or we can't bring them into our homes.
Let's go back to March. And when you were setting your budget and looking at the year 2020, I think we're all optimistic about it. Then this hit in March, and as you're looking, you were about a month away from opening your new house. My guess is you had to shift gears very, very quickly to adapt to what was going on.
Yeah, we took some time, about a month to pause, got together a program committee, looked at where we were at, where the budget was at. I really tried not to get nervous about the fact that we were about to close on a second location in the middle of a pandemic. I myself am a believer in God and just had to have faith that He would help us make things possible. And that's what I saw throughout the entire process. It was difficult. I call it, at some point, my mountain that I had to climb, a lot of obstacles in terms of, there were a lot of people staying home and doing work at home. So finding tradespeople like plumbers and electricians were really difficult. And at a rate, they were able to charge because they were in high demand too. So finding people who could help us at a reasonable rate and actually do the work that needed to be done. But we got it done in about 3 months, which is a pretty spectacular feat. So.
Sure. You talked too about doing some things virtually. What are those? How are you doing those?
So throughout the first part of the pandemic, when everything was closed down, we shifted our classes to what we were doing virtually. And some of our life skills programming is books that we help self-guide the mothers and kids through. So we were able to make that work. Some of our programs and other nonprofits that we partner with that do some of our classes, they actually shut down. So there was nothing we could really do about that. But we bought the kids, like volleyball nets to be able to play outside. And we subscribed to Mel Science and things like that to keep them occupied in STEM programs. And so we did whatever we could do to make the process easy. We brought in gym equipment so they could work out in the house. So we've done a lot of that. And then once the governor started, easing up on the restrictions, we actually were able to do some in-person classes. And right now we have minimal classes still in person with COVID guidelines obviously in place. And we're just preparing ourselves for the fact that we may need to go back to full virtual in the near future if the numbers keep going the way they are.
As you watch the children in the homes, how are they dealing with this? I mean, their lives are kind of in turmoil to begin with. So let's add COVID to this mix. It can't be easy for them.
No, it's not easy, and it's not easy for us as a program. We're constantly dealing with, the call of, oh, I woke up with a cold-like symptoms today, and then we have to constantly shift our staffing, and, we're all jumping in to help and make sure that each house is staffed 24/7. But I have my own children, and I watch the children at Christina's house too. The social and emotional impact that these children are going to have is like nothing you and I could even imagine. And I think about the toddlers and young infants who are just seeing people with masks on all the time. And that's their first, those are their first experiences in their life. That's like, Dave, you and I never had to go through that before. So I think the long-term impact is yet to be seen. And so we try as much as possible to allow each house to kind of live in as much of a normal fashion as possible, like a family, while providing the safety and following guidelines as we can for COVID-19.
I'm thinking too that, for all of us that, when you see a child in need, you just want to go and give them a hug. And because of COVID, it's like you almost have to pull back from that. That can't be easy either.
No, it's not easy. And anybody that knows me knows that I am a hugger. And anybody that comes to volunteer in the house is typically because they want to love and give back. So it has been really hard to restrain ourselves from being able to pick up an infant or a 2-year-old. But that's why we have such strict guidelines in place, especially for our house moms who live in the home, sanitizing your hands. So there's ways to do it in a safe way. But there's a lot of guidelines that we have to follow at the same time. But yes, it's hard.
Now, as you look ahead, my guess is with COVID and the uncertainty of it, and as far as a vaccine and things like that, you have to pretty much take things month by month.
Day by day.
Day by day, yeah.
Definitely day by day. One day at a time.
One day at a time. But you do have a lot of community support, and I know John Delaney and the Ride to Remember have been a long supporter of Christina's House. Let's talk about that relationship.
Yeah. So back in the beginning of the start of Christina's House in around 2013, that was when the relationship with the Ride to Remember started. We had known about the death of Officer Kevin Ambrose about a year before, and we wanted to be able to honor his life in Christina's house, because he died in the line of fire protecting a mother and child in a domestic dispute. And that often is the case for our moms, that they are fighting for their lives, and we have the people, the first responders, who are fighting for them. So what better way to honor his legacy than to sponsor a room in his name in one of our homes? And so after meeting with Carla Ambrose and her son, they had chosen Christina's House to be their charity of choice before we even opened our first home, after a meeting with them explaining what we wanted to do and why. And so we had their blessing to go to the police department. And our idea was that we were going to have little change cans that we were going to bring to the police department to see if the officers would help us by collecting change. And every month I would go to the police department and get the can. And that would be one of the many ways we raise money for the program, and to have the room sponsored in honor of Kevin. And so I sat down with John Delaney and my mother-in-law. I'd never been in a police station before. And I remember John just saying, why are you here? And so I explained to him what we were trying to do. And after meeting with him for about an hour, we invited him to the house to see what we were doing. And John shares the story that when he came to the house, he sat in his car and calls it the epiphany, that it wasn't about the change cans. It was about partnering with us through the Ride to Remember to be able to help such a worthwhile cause in the community, to be able to get back, to give back to the community. And when he saw the house, he saw a house in shambles with a roof that was deteriorating and siding that was peeling. I never saw that, so it was always interesting to hear that story from him. But the first check that the Ride to Remember presented to us actually allowed us to fix our leaking roof and to fix the siding so that we could get the house safe enough for the moms and kids who would live there. And ever since then, it's just been a beautiful partnership. When we have the Ride to Remember, Christina's House helps by providing 40 to 50 plus volunteers helping to get all the food and drinks for the riders and providing everything that's needed at each rest stop. So we can't wait to get back to that next year if everything goes well.
I know it's, what a wonderful way to preserve Kevin Ambrose's memory too, by having that room in his name.
And at our second location, we actually just did a ribbon cutting ceremony, and we do have a garden. We planted a tree in honor of Kevin, and we have a little area, a little bench, and memorial for the ride to remember as well.
So on that note, let's talk about Christmas with Christina's House, and obviously sponsored by the Ride to Remember. What's that all about?
So every year, actually, our annual ball started before, again, we even owned our first home as a way to raise money to be able to put a down payment on our first mortgage. That year, we raised $8,000, and it's become an annual tradition. It's not just about raising money, it's about celebrating the successes that Christina's House has had each year. So this year, because of the pandemic, we were not able to host an in-person gala. And every year it's about 400 plus people, and we have music and a live and silent auction. It just is such a tremendous event. But this year we're going to take the best pieces of what we would do in person and pivot it to a virtual platform on Saturday, December 5th, starting at 6 p.m.
So what's that going to look like? How are you going to carry that off this year? I mean, there's so many, you're finding new ways to do things, and obviously this is one of them.
Yes. So people can go directly to our website, our Christmas with Christina's House page, and we're going to be streaming the event live starting at 6 p.m. on our YouTube page, but it'll go through our website. They could also turn into our YouTube page or go to the Christina's House Facebook page, and we'll be streaming it through there. Right now, if people go to our website, they'll see all of the 100 plus amazing auction items that we have. And so if you know about a silent auction, you know that we have amazing packages that are ready for gifting for the holiday season, and you get things a little bit cheaper than you would just going to the store. So it's unique items that we've put together, fabulous volunteer team. You get it at discounted rates, plus you're supporting an amazing cause. So we're really thankful to the many, many sponsors of this event too. I was worried going into this year that, because of the businesses in our community and how they've been impacted, that people wouldn't be able to sponsor, but it's been quite the opposite. We've had so many people step up to the plate to be able to support our mission through this event. And we're just so excited.
Now, are you finding that these businesses or even just people in the community are just looking for ways to find some way to be able to help?
Yeah, because people are, they're locked into their homes, like you and I, sometimes often working from home, but people still want to have a purpose in life. And so I think being able to find something to give back to that's worthwhile gives them purpose and meaning, whether it's individually or through a business.
That, and you'd mentioned this a few minutes ago about how people are just looking for good to do, and that's part of as we kind of tend to lean to the downside of what's going on with COVID. There are so many good things, and that's part of it.
Exactly. I think we can get so caught up in the negativity of everything that's going on in the world. I try to, like I said, focus on the positive things for both myself and my family, and for the families at Christina's House, so that we don't get so caught up in the emotional negativity, but that we can focus on the things and the good that people are doing.
And there's a lot of that going on. So now, are you taking any more donations for items that would go up for auction, or is that pretty much set?
Yeah, the auction is pretty much set. People can still sponsor the event up through Wednesday of this week, but the event is pretty much all set and ready to go. And if people want to tune in at 6 o'clock on Saturday, December 5th, like I said, our Facebook page, our YouTube page, or directly on our website. But they do need to pre-register for the auction. And if they go to our Christmas with Christina's House page and hit register now, they can sign up for the auction so they can bid on our many amazing items, including my mother-in-law is making her own Christmas pasta dinner for 6. So that's pretty awesome. And we'll have more details for that the night of the event, because that's a live auction item.
So when folks tune in, what can they expect? I mean, we talk about a gala, and there's dancing and music and everything else. What can they expect when they tune in?
So we are going to have, we're going to do kind of like a pre-red carpet kind of thing before, where we invite some of our special guests on. We will have some of our silent auction features. We're going to do a live auction and a raise the paddle, which will help us raise funds for very specific things in the program that we're trying to raise money for, like sponsoring a family. We have live acoustic musician by musician Sean Santinello. And we have commercial breaks with some of our sponsors. We also have testimonials from our families and updates about our new home, and also a special video we're putting together about the Ride to Remember and its relationship with Christina's House, and much more.
Now, is some of the things that you've done to adapt with COVID-19, do you think once all this is over with and we're back to normal, whatever that normal is, you will continue with them? Because I found with many of the organizations I've spoken with, they said, we've found these great new ways to do things that we never really thought of before.
Right. And I think that's, again, one of the many different ways to look at, you can see everything as negative, or you can see it as a new opportunity to learn from this and to grow. So I definitely think that we're going to take a lot of things from the pandemic and how we've pivoted, and definitely continue that into the future. Not having as many fundraisers has definitely freed up a lot of my time and our volunteers' time. And so I think really focusing on a few really solid events, instead of taking up so much time with smaller things, that just really takes us away from what we need to do with our families, is definitely something I've learned. I've been able to take more solid time to look at the programming, and look at the overall structure and foundation of the program, which has been tremendous. And I'm thankful for that extra time. And so, yeah, I definitely think we're going to learn to take some of what we've pivoted and continue that into the future.
Now, if folks can't take part in Christmas with Christina's House, we're in the holiday season. Obviously, Thanksgiving will be past, and we look ahead to Christmas and the other holidays too, and New Year's. How can folks continue to help Christina's House year round?
So one of the real easy ways to do that is to become a monthly supporter. It could be $5 a month, $50 a month, whatever people can give, because that gives us a foundation that we can depend on every single day. They can also do a one-time donation. They can email us to get involved, whether it's volunteering or dropping off a meal once a month. There are so many ways for people to get involved, whether it's joining our volunteer team, like I said, or becoming a financial supporter, or becoming a community partner and sharing some of the gifts and talents that you may have, like teaching an art class, dropping off knitted hats or gloves, whatever it might be. Don't think that you don't have something to offer. Just reach out to us and we'll connect you.
Now, as we look ahead, obviously looking forward to the days without COVID-19. Anything we haven't touched on that you'd like to touch on to let our viewers and listeners know about?
No, I just think my overarching goal today is to let people know that we can do more together. We're better together, that we are a community, to try to see some of the positive things through all of the negativity. And just that we at Christina's House are so grateful for the many people who support our mission and who really believe in helping the mothers and kids we serve and getting a better start at life. Basically, it's a new path for them when they come into our program. So we're grateful for the support, and we're grateful for you having us on today so that we could raise awareness. And people often ask me, do we want more than 2 houses? And I'd love to have more than 2 houses, but it's quality over quantity. So whenever that happens, it happens. But I'm grateful for the 2 amazing houses and the amazing women and children that we get to partner with each day.
Yes, when you talk about more than 2 houses, obviously this is a need that will continue to grow. This is not homelessness for mothers and their children is not going to go away.
No, it's not. And I think maybe one of the things that I would love to touch on is that our 2 homes are not paid off. We have mortgages on both of our homes. So our goal over the next 3 years is to get those mortgages paid down. And we know that with the help of our community, we can do that. And that would free up so much more for us to be able to do even more in the program and potentially even further our mission by buying another house.
Shannon, I can't thank you enough for joining me, and God bless you for all you do. Hopefully, we'll soon be able to get together in person as opposed to doing it by Zoom, and do a follow up, because I think Christina's House is something that we have to be reminded of over the course of every 6 months or so, to especially with this pandemic, that listen, anybody could be in this position at any time.
My thanks to Shannon Mumblo for taking the time to join me for the Even Better Western Mass podcast. Now, if you'd like to help Christina's House or be part of the Christmas with Christina's House, you can visit christinashouse.org. Thanks for watching or listening to this week's edition of the Even Better Western Mass podcast. I'm Dave Madsen. Stay safe, stay well, and if you can, join me next week.